In today's episode, we're diving into one of the most important decisions for your financial future, choosing the right financial advisor. If you're 50 to 70 and within 10 to 15 years of retirement, this decision could determine whether you spend the rest of your life worrying about money or you spend the rest of your life doing what you love. So please stay tuned if you want a secure financial future you love. If you enjoy our free podcasts, please follow us on Apple Podcasts and also give us a 5-star review and share your comments. We really appreciate them. Hi, I'm Annette Ba'u, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/147. The Millionaire Insider copyrights all materials and intellectual property. This information is for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide any financial, investment, tax, retirement, or healthcare advice. By accessing this content, you agree to hold the Millionaire Insider and its affiliates harmless for results achieved or not achieved. For today's free resource, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/FFG and access our Financial Freedom Guide. This Financial Freedom Guide is going to help you with basically the formula you need to create your financial plan. And it dives into 3 components: your inner game, your foundation, your game plan, which is your strategy, and then your outer game, which is your execution. And it's going to go really well with today's episode. So again, I encourage you to download it at themillionaireinsider.com/FFG. So number 1, why choosing the right financial advisor is so important. When you're nearing retirement or even thinking about the potential of it, meaning you could even be younger, but say, God, I would love to retire sooner, or have the choice of whether or not I work. See, for me, it's never been about retirement. It's about being able to choose. Do I want to work? And more importantly, do I want to work with specific clients? Meaning when you have money, you get to choose who gets into that circle, right? Whereas when you don't, you kind of work with anyone. And the problem is that financial mistakes get more and more costly as you get closer to retirement and you have less time to recover from them. So it is absolutely critical. Now, not all advisors are created equal, just like not all doctors are. And the issue is the wrong one, the wrong advice can cost you tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And so it's really important that you're working with somebody who is qualified. Now, a qualified advisor is going to help you, first of all, create a comprehensive plan, like your big picture. And what they're going to look for are gaps. Do you have enough insurance in the different areas? Are you minimizing taxes? Are you maximizing your investment? Do you have a plan so you're not going to run out of money? They're going to look at the big picture, and then they're going to come up with a plan to help you create a strategy so all your goals are met and you don't have financial problems. They're also going to ensure that you, most importantly, don't have to worry about money or your financial future in retirement. I mean, there is nothing attractive about being retired and worried about money. And the statistics a year ago were showing that about 22% of Americans were really solid, felt really good. There was probably about another 20% that were like iffy, maybe okay, maybe not. And then there's like 50% that just aren't. And it's really concerning. And I think it's going to get worse. I mean, I just think with the cost of goods, the concern of some of the safety nets, it's not getting better. What's fascinating to me is that there are so many people that need those safety nets, and it's almost like they don't realize it. I mean, they somehow think they're like in this top billionaire percent where they don't need it. And the reality of it is that safety nets are really important. And I understand, I'm not talking about people that are taking advantage of the system, but I'm talking about hardworking people who end up having health problems or having different situations where they do need some type of safety net. And with those gone, it's going to put more of the burden on us. And so we have to even make sure we're taking more time and focusing more energy on creating that plan that's going to work regardless of what happens in the future. And then they're also going to help you align your finances with your values and your lifestyle goals. What's unique to you, what you want. I want to share a case study. Paul and Sally, and I have changed the names. They had purchased numerous financial products and they had no plan. In fact, when I started working with them, I was like, what is going on here? They were so nervous about not having money or not having a plan or not knowing really how everything tied together. And when I got in there, I'm like, well, clearly I can see why. You've just been sold so many different products and nothing was working together. They had overlaps in their investment. They didn't really have any type of tax strategy. Once they created a plan and they got things aligned with where was their guaranteed income going to come from? Where was their growth coming from? How were they minimizing their taxes? What were they doing to maximize their retirement? Literally, their confidence and their financial certainty skyrocketed. But more importantly, their relationship did. They stopped having the constant challenges or chaos that were caused by arguments over money or not knowing what was going to happen or knowing if they could achieve their goals. They wanted to move to a warmer climate. They had all these dreams they wanted to achieve, and they just had no idea if they could do it. And after they got a plan and they created it, it changed everything. That's the power. Number 2, the advisor-client fit and what to look for. Now, not every financial advisor is a planner. And I will just say this, as a true financial planner, it is so much work. There's basically 3 advisors. But before we get into the different types of advisors, I want to talk about others. And there are a lot of people who are more product salespeople. They're there to sell you either an investment or they're there to sell you life insurance or they're there to sell you an annuity. Now, very rarely do those people have a fiduciary duty. And I personally, if I was making a decision, would steer clear of that structure. All right, so that's one. But then when it comes to advisors, people who are advisors, and many of them do have a fiduciary duty, they're ones that pretty much just manage money. And that's their focus. And they do have a fiduciary duty when it comes to managing the money, but they're not looking at your big picture. And again, I personally would steer clear of those because the problem is you're not going to have a plan. Now, there's 2 other types of advisors. And the most common one is somebody who will do a plan initially, but then they don't do any follow-up. And it's just, to me, it's just crazy because I'm like, okay, well, who's doing the follow-up? And they're like, well, it's so much work and so much time, and a lot of people don't want to pay for it. Now, if that's the case with you, meaning you don't want to pay for it and you're committed to doing it yourself, then okay, that's fine. I'm not sure most people are qualified to do that, but let's just say that's where you fall and you're okay with it. Then, all right, then you can proceed. But most people either need, a little hand-holding or a lot of hand-holding. And I personally have seen the greatest value of people that have ongoing advice. And I'm going to give you an example. We had completed a plan for a client, and then things changed with some of their inheritance and what they found out they were getting. Well, we were able to go and help them with the retitling of that asset to make sure that it avoided probate. So the person basically saved $70,000 because of one thing we did with the ongoing planning. Now, had they been with an advisor that just did the upfront and then forget it, we don't do anything, they would have ended up losing $70,000. That's a lot of money. So those are the kind of things that I want you to get. And that's why I personally recommend that you have an advisor that is more of like a CFO or somebody that will help you ongoing. Now, how much ongoing they help you or how much you do, that's what you can discuss. Meaning for me, if somebody is willing to go do the work that I tell them to do, I'm fine with it. But what you typically need is a little bit of guidance, like getting your revocable trust, your estate plan done. You're then going to need somebody that's going to help you outline your assets so you know how to transfer them and how they pass. And so you can do a lot of that, in fact, an awful lot of that, and save a lot of money. But you got to have somebody that's giving you help on that. And then as far as making sure all your other assets are where they need to be and they're structured properly, the maintenance can be very low. It does not have to be really high, unless that's what you choose. So I hope that helps, but it's really important that you have an advisor that's not just a one-off and then you're left to do things. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, that would have been good to know. Now I've just spent an extra $70,000 I didn't need to spend. A true financial planner is going to build more of a holistic strategy, and they're going to address everything from the investments to the insurance to the taxes to the retirement. Sometimes, when it comes more to like a financial advisor or an investment advisor or a money manager, they're going to focus more in on the investments, sometimes on the plan. So what you want to evaluate is, does this person have the experience you need? Meaning, like, do they have experience helping pre-retirees and retirees transition from accumulation to income? See, there are so many advisors that are really bad when it comes to pre-retirement or retirement. They're really good at the accumulation, right? Invest in these funds and get your money to grow. But then when it comes to really minimizing taxes, maximizing your retirement income, not so good. So you want to check that out. Are they fiduciaries? Do they have to act in your best interest? Do they provide a written, comprehensive financial plan, not just product recommendations? Now, I will say this much. If you have a really good planner, sometimes what they will do, if they see a real big problem in your plan, like so let's say, for instance, you're way underinsured or your insurance is just the wrong type based on what you want to accomplish, it would be advisable in that situation for the advisor to go take care of that situation and then dial back into your overall plan. Because what you don't want to do is spend all this time getting this plan done where you have this big gap that everyone knows about. You don't do anything about it. And God forbid something happens, like let's say it's disability insurance. You don't have the adequate coverage you need. And now all of a sudden you're not addressing it because you're focused on the plan. You become disabled. It can be disastrous. Or it might be long-term care. You don't have adequate coverage. You need to take care of that sooner rather than later. So those are the exceptions to the rule. Do they coordinate your big picture plan, your financial, your tax, your insurance, your estate? And are they qualified? How many clients have they done that for? Because this is the thing. Like, I've been doing estate planning for literally 36 years. I started doing it long before it was popular. So, I have like a PhD in estate planning. You just want somebody that knows what they're doing, because when somebody knows what they're doing, then it's really easy to make sure everything's coordinated and make sure you have everything dialed in. When somebody's like, oh yeah, I do estate planning. Well, how many have you done? Well, I just started doing it a year ago. The problem is they haven't had the experience or the in the trenches, how it actually turns out versus how it's supposed to turn out to know what you need to do. And another example, and again, I'm not an attorney, I don't practice law, but what we do is we review the trusts when they come to our desk before the client signs them. And obviously the attorney has drafted them. Well, just yesterday, there was a provision in there that said, the donor, meaning the grantor, the person who's created the trust, their wife is going to become the trustee. It's like, what? No, that's the sister. So attorneys always they have a boilerplate plan and they miss those things. We've had estate plans where there have been names of people inheriting money that were not their relatives. They were some other relative of somebody else they did a trust for. And I wish I could say these are one-offs. They happen all the time. So you just got to make sure somebody's paying attention to that. What do they specialize in? Again, like, are they good at accumulation or are they good at retirement distribution? Big difference. How do they get compensated? Are they fee only? Are they fee plus commission, or are they only commission? Now, I'm not as concerned about how somebody's being paid as I am the fact that they're a fiduciary. Because the reality of it is, it's becoming better, but there are still certain insurance products and even annuities that pay a commission. And the product, in my opinion, is better than the comparison that is fee-based. Now, what we do, and this is just to give you an example, is if we sell an annuity, and obviously sometimes there's exceptions to the rules, meaning we just did one where they didn't give you an option. But if we have an option and there's no other extenuating circumstances, we put the annuity in just like we were managing the money. So we're going to be paid ongoing while they have the money in the annuity, just like if they have the money in the investment. So there's really no conflict there. Now, sometimes that doesn't work, but if that's the case, because it can be, you still want to make sure that you're hiring somebody that's going to be there to service it. Like in the case I just shared with you, it was so frustrating. They only had one option and it was upfront. And it was the best option because it gave him the most money. So we did it, but we will still continue to service it. So you just want to ask those questions. You want to make sure and start with clarity. You want to know what you want and you want to know what you want to achieve. And then you want to find the advisor that can help make it a reality. All right, number 3, what makes a great advisor? I think the most important thing is trust, that you feel trust, like you feel they're a good person, like they're going to do the right thing for you versus the right thing for them or their company. Some great questions include, are they independent? Can they access multiple products and carriers, or are they tied to one company? Now, I feel really strongly about this. I've been independent almost all my career. The problem when somebody is not independent is they're selling you something that's probably not the best option, and they don't have other options. And so that's a big one. Another one is, do they listen to you? Are they really listening to you, or do they talk down to you? Are they understanding your needs or somebody else's? One of my clients has a tendency of not wanting to pay attention to the details. And we were just on a call and I said, I want to make sure you got this. And I know this is so boring and so hard for you. And I can appreciate it. It was really technical and it was boring for me too. She goes, thank you so much for saying me. And I thought, that's what you want in an advisor, somebody that understands that not everyone loves all those details. And that's why they have an advisor. And then, are they there to educate and inform you? Or are they there just trying to sell you? Do they simplify complex concepts, or do they confuse you with all the jargon so you don't even really know what you're doing? Now, I was recently in a meeting where we were talking about just some different concepts, and the person's like, oh, I'm so confused. I'm like, all right, let me just give you the bottom line. The bottom line is, with this scenario, the client ends up 15,000 better than the other scenario. Okay, I get it. And so you got to be able to communicate like that if you don't know what they're talking about or you don't fully understand it, they can put it down in layman's terms so you can understand it. Now, some red flags that are pretty obvious, but I just want to go over them. If somebody's really high pressure, you got to do it now, or they're sharing unrealistic guarantees, or they're really focused in on returns. I would just run as fast as I could, because the reality of it is you got to look at your risk tolerance. And based on that, you're going to be invested. Some of the money is going to be for growth. So you want to make sure that you've got clarity on the goal there. But then some of the money is going to be more for retirement. And again, you just got to be really clear on that. It's one of the things that whenever somebody's bragging about how well they can do, I just think that's a red flag. If whenever you bring up fees or commissions, they just kind of like change the subject or don't want to go down there, or they're not disclosing how they're paid, I would run. And especially if they're not a fiduciary, I would run faster. Let's say they don't know anything about you and they're already recommending something. Wrong person. Now, if you have a really long meeting and you're talking about specifics and you start asking questions, then I think it's appropriate for them to start talking about options. But for them to just try to sell you something and not even know anything, that's a complete red flag. All right, number four, questions to ask before hiring. So you want to make sure you've asked some questions. Are they a fiduciary? That makes sense. How are they compensated? Who's their ideal client? And you don't need to say anything about yourself, just who's your ideal client? And if they say, well, tell me about you, say, well, first of all, I'd like to know, who do you generally work with? And if you don't hear anything about pre-retirement or retirement and that's your thought process, I'd run. I personally would run if they're not experts at pre-retirement or retirement, even if I was in my 20s. That said, you have to understand that the reason you'd want somebody that's knowledgeable in that area is because you want to possibly retire sooner. Now, obviously, the needs you have in your 20s is going to be different than needs in 50, but somebody that's good, has the breadth of a true planner, is going to be able to adapt to that, assuming that they can adapt when you are getting ready for retirement, or they have some expertise to go from accumulation to more of the transition to receiving income. What services do they provide? Financial planning, tax strategy, investment management. How are they going to help you create guaranteed lifetime income? And, get the specifics. Ask them for actual examples. What's your process for determining how much I can safely spend in retirement? If they're not talking about need-based expenses and want-based expenses and guaranteed income, I personally would run. There's a lot of people that don't talk at all about guaranteed income. Why? Because it's been 17 years since we've had a down market, and most of the people giving advice have not been through those periods. That is a serious issue. So pay attention to that. How do they coordinate your plan with your CPA, your attorney, and other people? Maybe even if you have a business attorney or some other type of attorney, and you also have an estate planning attorney. Figure out how that works. And then how often are you going to meet and are they going to update your plan? A great advisor is going to welcome questions because they know that they're building a long-term relationship and they want trust and they want you to feel comfortable. All right, mistakes to avoid when choosing an advisor. Just choosing a family friend or somebody that's in the business. Oh my gosh, I have seen so many major problems with that. So be careful there. Working with somebody that just manages the money and does not really look at your big picture. Buying a product like annuity or life insurance without understanding how it fits into your plan, or purchasing it from somebody who's not a fiduciary, not understanding how they're compensated or what service to expect. And then believing that credentials alone are enough. You got to look at character, values, integrity, all those things also. So many advisors were trained to sell a product, myself included. I mean, everyone, it's a focus on selling a product. And unfortunately, if somebody does not have the morals and ethics, it could be the fact that it's not what you need. You need someone who's going to help you implement a plan that gives you confidence in your future, that helps you create that secure retirement and life you love. All right, some red flags. They talk more than they listen, or they talk down to you. I have had so many women say, I'm firing my husband's advisor because he talks down to me, talks to me like I'm a child. They don't ask or really care about your goals or your lifestyle, or they try to convince you of something else. Now, the only exception to that, in my opinion, would be if you met with somebody and let's say, for instance, you're thinking like, well, all I really want to do is, have somebody manage my money. And you're not really thinking that you need any guaranteed income. And then all of a sudden you say, well, okay, what happens when the market goes down? And they're like, well, you just don't take as much or you don't take money. You're like, well, wait a minute, then where do I get my money? You start asking questions, it kind of starts poking holes in it. So that would be an exception to the rule where I would expect the advisor to kind of challenge you on that and give you other options. But if you're talking about your goal of being able to travel more and your goal of having a very simple plan and your goal of whatever else you may want to do and figuring out how to do that, and they're just kind of ignoring that and just focusing in on trying to sell you a life insurance policy or something that's not even related to what you're sharing you want to do, that's where I'd be really careful. If they have just this one size fits all, they're vague about how they're paid, or they fail to help you create a financial plan, and they can't explain how you're going to replace your paycheck or how you're going to have enough income and you don't have to worry about running out of money. If they're not talking about that topic, which is the biggest risk, especially for women, I would run faster than I could say boo. It's a problem. All right, so let's recap on choosing the right financial advisor. So you got to know why it's important, right? We went over several issues there. You want to make sure that you're identifying the right advisor that's going to fit with you. You want to make sure that they've got the traits, that you trust them, that they have transparency, that they really care about you, that they listen to you. Review those must-ask questions before hiring them and just see how they respond. And when you say, who's your ideal client? They say, well, tell me about you. No, I want to know about your ideal client. Tell me about the majority of clients you work with. What percentage of your clients are women? What percentage of your clients are accumulation or retired? And then see if they even bring up pre-retirement. If they don't bring up pre-retirement, they're probably not qualified. They've got to know those 3 stages because those are critical. And then look at the mistakes and then red flags. Pay attention to that gut, my friend, especially you women, And sometimes it's like, you have that feeling, but you're still like, oh, this person, they were recommended or they're good, but they don't. If they fail any of those questions, you got to make an escape sooner rather than later. So our free resource, you can access the Financial Freedom Formula, which will go really well with today's episode at themillionaireinsider.com/FFG. And if you need specific help, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/support-request. Choosing the right financial advisor is not just a financial decision. It is a major life decision. When your finances are in order, you're going to gain the confidence and the freedom that allows you to spend the time doing what you love. Oh, my friends, it's so worth it. I'll look so forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye for now.